January 15, 2026. After 8 months of silence, court documents in the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan were unsealed. What they revealed shocked the public. 12 search warrants, executed between May 16th and July 16th, 2025, each one targeting specific evidence, each one building a picture investigators never shared publicly. Cell phone records, bank accounts, highway surveillance, school bus footage. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police had been investigating far more than anyone realized. For months, the public believed this was a simple missing persons case. 2 children who wandered into the woods, a tragic accident waiting to be resolved. But these documents tell a different story. They reveal an investigation that moved quickly, methodically, strategically, an investigation that considered possibilities the RCMP never disclosed. What were investigators really looking for? What did these 12 search warrants reveal about the direction of this case? And why did it take 8 months for the public to learn what the RCMP knew from the very beginning? 8 months ago, on May 2nd, 2025, Lily Sullivan and her brother Jack were reported missing from their home in Lansdowne Station, Pictou County, Nova Scotia. The children lived with their mother, Malahia Brooks Murray, and her partner, Daniel Martel, in a mobile home on Gairloch Road. At 10:01 that morning, a 911 call reported the children had wandered away from the property while the adults were sleeping. What followed was one of the most intensive missing persons investigations in Nova Scotia history. Over 160 searchers deployed, 8.5 square kilometers of heavily wooded terrain searched, helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, ground teams. The search was scaled back after 6 days when no trace of the children was found. But the investigation continued. Behind the scenes, the RCMP Major Crime Unit was building a case the public never saw. Between May 16, 2025 and July 16, 2025, investigators sought 12 separate search warrants under the Missing Persons Act. These warrants were filed with the provincial court in Pictou. They were sealed by a judge at the request of the RCMP. For 8 months, the contents remained hidden. Then, in January 2026, media organizations including CBC News and the Globe and Mail successfully applied to have portions of the documents unsealed. What emerged was a detailed account of what investigators were pursuing in the critical first weeks and months after Lily and Jack disappeared. Before we break down each of these 12 search warrants and what they reveal about this investigation, if you are following the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, or if you want to understand how major crime investigations actually work, subscribe to Unsolved Archive and turn on notifications. We focus on the investigation, the evidence, and the search for answers in cases that refuse to stay buried. Now, let us examine what the RCMP was really looking for. To understand the significance of these 12 warrants, we first need to understand what they are and why they matter. In Canada, police cannot access private records without judicial authorization. Under the Missing Persons Act, investigators can request records that might help locate missing persons. This has a lower threshold than criminal warrants. Each application includes an affidavit from an investigator outlining what they know, what they seek, and why it will help. For Lily and Jack Sullivan, RCMP Major Crime Unit investigators filed these affidavits with the provincial court. A judge reviewed them and authorized the searches. What makes these warrants significant is what they reveal about investigative direction. When police seek cell phone records, they examine communications and location data. Bank records show financial transactions. Surveillance footage builds timelines. Each warrant is a piece of the puzzle. Together, they show what investigators believed might have happened. And what the documents reveal is that from the beginning, the RCMP considered possibilities beyond the theory that the children simply wandered off. The RCMP sought 12 separate search warrants between May 16th and July 16th, 2025. The first was filed just 14 days after the children were reported missing. The last was filed more than 2 months later. This timeline shows investigators were actively pursuing multiple lines of inquiry simultaneously. The warrants targeted communication, movement, financial activity, and visual documentation. According to RCMP Corporal Charlene Curl, the information was requested because, quote, the last time Jack and Lily's location was independently verified was on May 1st at 2:25 p.m. at their local Dollarama via video surveillance. This statement is critical. After May 1st at 2:25 in the afternoon, there is no independent verification of where the children were. Everything after that moment relies on family statements. The warrants were designed to corroborate those statements or identify inconsistencies. The first category of warrants targeted cell phone records for both Malahia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel. Cell phone records include call logs showing every incoming and outgoing call, text messages, location data from cell towers, and internet activity including browsing history and searches. Why would investigators want this information? If either made calls or sent messages before the children were reported missing, those communications could be significant. Who were they contacting? What were they saying? If either phone pinged cell towers in locations inconsistent with their stated timeline, that raises questions. If internet searches were conducted related to concerning topics, that would be extremely relevant. The warrant indicates investigators wanted to verify movements and communications during the critical period. This is standard procedure, but it signals that from May 16th, less than 2 weeks into the case, the RCMP was not accepting the initial account at face value. They were verifying, cross-checking, building an independent timeline. The RCMP sought bank records for both adults in the home. Financial records reveal patterns. Large cash withdrawals before a disappearance can indicate planning. Purchases of specific items like cleaning supplies or tools can be significant. Sudden changes in spending raise questions. The warrant for bank records suggests investigators were looking for financial activity that might explain what happened to Lily and Jack. Were there unusual purchases in the days before May 2nd? Withdrawals that cannot be explained? Transactions in locations distant from home? The documents do not reveal what was found. That information remains sealed. But seeking these records within 2 months indicates investigators were building a comprehensive picture of household activities. This is not the action of investigators who believe the case is a simple accident. One of the most revealing warrants involved highway surveillance footage of drivers leaving Nova Scotia between May 1st and May 3rd. This is extraordinary. It indicates investigators considered the possibility that Lily and Jack were removed from the province. If the children simply wandered into the woods, there would be no reason to examine highway footage. If they were still in Pictou County, there would be no reason to track departures. But if investigators believe someone might have taken the children out of Nova Scotia, highway surveillance becomes critical. The time frame is specific. May 1st was the last day location was independently verified. May 2nd was when they were reported missing. May 3rd was the day after. By seeking this 3-day window, investigators looked for vehicles that might have transported the children away. This is significant. Within weeks, the RCMP was not limiting search to Lansdowne Woods. They were considering a much wider geographic area. Another warrant targeted school bus video surveillance from routes near the Sullivan home. The RCMP sought this because Lily and Jack were marked absent May 2nd, the day reported missing, and May 1st. Malahia Brooks Murray said the children stayed home because Lily had a cough. School bus footage could verify when children were last seen boarding. It could show their behavior, appearance, and who was with them. The warrant indicates investigators wanted the last confirmed public sighting where independent witnesses and video existed. Additional warrants sought records from companies whose names were redacted. These could be telecommunications, internet providers, or other entities with relevant data. The pattern across all 12 warrants is consistent. The RCMP gathered information from every possible source. They documented communications, movements, financial activity, and interactions with the outside world. This is methodical major crime investigation work designed to leave no stone unturned. The unsealed documents reveal what investigators sought, but they do not reveal what was found. Significant portions remain redacted. Results are sealed. Details about findings are privileged or delayed disclosure. RCMP Corporal Charlene Curl stated, quote, "When an investigation is ongoing, it is difficult to know what information, if made public, would compromise future investigative steps." She continued, quote, "While at this stage we do not have reasonable grounds to believe a crime has been committed, that assessment could change as we move forward with our investigation." This confirms that as of January 2026, the RCMP does not have reasonable grounds for criminal charges, but the investigation could become criminal. This is why so much remains sealed. If charges are laid, the defense reviews all evidence. Until then, the RCMP protects investigation integrity. What we know is polygraph examinations on Malahia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel showed both were truthful on 4 undisclosed questions. No confirmed sightings have been reported since May 1st. Despite extensive searches and forensic work, Lily and Jack Sullivan have not been found. What do these 12 search warrants tell us? First, from early in the case, the RCMP considered possibilities beyond the wandered-off theory. The breadth shows investigators examined every aspect of household activities. This is not the approach for a straightforward missing persons case. This is used when investigators have questions needing answers. Second, warrants reveal investigators built an independent timeline based on objective evidence rather than relying on family statements. The emphasis on Dollarama surveillance from May 1st at 2:25 p.m. as the last independent verification is significant. It establishes a cutoff. After that moment, everything relies on what family members say. Third, the highway surveillance warrant indicates openness to the possibility children were removed from Nova Scotia. This suggests geographic expansion beyond Pictou County. Fourth, timing shows investigators moved quickly. First warrant filed May 16th, just 14 days after disappearance. Criminologist Michael Arntfield, who has commented on the case, stated that he is surprised the investigation has not turned criminal. In his experience, missing persons cases are generally deemed suspicious if the missing individuals are not found after about a week. He noted that investigators appear to be, quote, pussyfooting around whether or not foul play is involved. Arntfield described the approach as, quote, novel in terms of these types of investigations, particularly dealing with two children. His observation raises an important question. Why has this case remained under the Missing Persons Act rather than becoming a criminal investigation? One explanation is that the RCMP does not yet have sufficient evidence to establish that a crime occurred. Without a body, without a crime scene, without witnesses, proving foul play is extraordinarily difficult. The polygraph results, showing both parents were truthful, complicate the picture further. If the adults closest to the children are passing polygraph examinations, it becomes harder to establish criminal intent. But the 12 search warrants show investigators are not simply accepting the wandered-off explanation. They are gathering information that could support multiple theories. The RCMP is building a foundation. If evidence eventually emerges that points to criminal activity, the groundwork is already in place. Despite the unsealing of portions of the documents, significant information remains redacted. The wording of the 4 questions asked during polygraph examinations is sealed. According to Corporal Curl, future polygraph tests may be conducted, and releasing the questions could compromise their integrity. Information about specific findings from the searches is sealed as privileged or delayed disclosure. Details about investigative theories and working hypotheses remain confidential. Names of companies and institutions from which records were sought are redacted. The RCMP has been clear about why this information must remain sealed. Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon stated that investigators must consider the impact on, quote, long-term justice should criminal charges eventually be laid. If the case becomes criminal, any information made public now could affect the ability to secure a conviction. Defense attorneys could argue that public disclosure tainted the investigation or prejudiced potential jurors. The RCMP is walking a careful line. They must be transparent enough to maintain public confidence, but they must also protect the investigation enough to preserve the possibility of future prosecution. As of January 2026, 8 months after Lily and Jack Sullivan were reported missing, the investigation remains active. The RCMP Major Crime Unit continues to lead the case with support from agencies across Canada. According to Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon, the scope of the investigation is massive. 86 formal interviews have been conducted with individuals connected to the case. More than 1,030 tips have been received from the public. Over 8,100 videos from the area have been reviewed by investigators. 7 polygraph examinations have been administered to people close to the children. All 7 individuals were found to be truthful in their responses. Multiple judicial authorizations have been obtained, including the 12 search warrants discussed in this investigation. Chief Superintendent Dan Morrow stated in a December interview that in his 33 years of policing, he has never seen a case like this. He described it as, quote, extremely rare, but noted that, quote, the part that isn't rare is the complexity of the case, like why it's taking so long, because these investigations have to be done in a methodical approach. The government of Nova Scotia is offering a reward of up to $150,000 for information leading to the location of the children. That reward remains unclaimed. The RCMP continues to ask anyone with information to come forward. Even the smallest detail could be the piece that breaks the case open. When we step back and look at the 12 search warrants as a whole, certain investigative priorities become clear. The RCMP was focused on verification. They wanted independent confirmation of where the children were when they were last seen and what the household was doing in the days before the disappearance. The RCMP was focused on communication. They wanted to know who the adults in the home were talking to, what they were saying, and whether those communications revealed anything significant. The RCMP was focused on movement. They wanted to track the family's movements, both locally and potentially beyond provincial borders. The RCMP was focused on financial activity. They wanted to understand the household's economic situation and whether any transactions raised questions. These are the priorities of an investigation that is thorough, professional, and open to multiple possibilities. They are not the priorities of an investigation that has settled on a single theory and is simply waiting for confirmation. The 12 search warrants reveal an investigation that is alive, active, and pursuing answers wherever the evidence might lead. One detail appears repeatedly throughout the unsealed documents. The last time Jack and Lily's location was independently verified was on May 1st at 2:25 p.m. at their local Dollarama via video surveillance. This timestamp has become a critical marker in the investigation. Before May 1st at 2:25 in the afternoon, the children's whereabouts can be confirmed through surveillance footage. After that moment, everything relies on statements from family members. The Dollarama footage reportedly shows Daniel Martell, Malehia Brooks Murray, their 1-year-old daughter Meadow, and both Lily and Jack. This is the last time anyone outside the family can independently confirm the children were alive and with their parents. Everything that happened after that moment, the trip home, the evening routine, the night of May 1st, the morning of May 2nd, all of it depends on what the adults in the home say occurred. The RCMP's emphasis on this timestamp indicates they understand its significance. It is the last objective data point in the timeline. This is why the search warrants sought so many different types of records. Investigators were trying to build an independent picture of what happened after 2:25 p.m. on May 1st. Did cell phone data confirm the family returned home? Did bank records show any unusual activity? Did surveillance cameras capture their vehicle on the route between New Glasgow and Lansdowne? The warrants were designed to either corroborate or challenge the account provided by family members. For 8 months, the public has been left with questions. What is the RCMP doing? What are they investigating? Why has there been so little information released? The unsealing of these court documents provides the first substantial window into the investigative process. They reveal that far more was happening behind the scenes than the public realized. While searches in the woods were scaled back, investigators were pursuing 12 separate lines of inquiry through the courts. They were gathering data, building timelines, verifying statements, cross-checking information. This is the work that solves cases. Not dramatic announcements, not public spectacle, but methodical, detailed, professional investigative work. The documents also reveal why the RCMP has been so cautious about public statements. They are building a case that could eventually become criminal. They cannot afford to compromise that potential case by releasing information prematurely. The unsealing happened only because media organizations argued successfully that the public interest in transparency outweighed the investigative need for secrecy. Even with the unsealing, significant portions remain redacted. The full picture will not emerge until the investigation concludes or criminal charges are laid. But what has been revealed is enough to show that this investigation is serious, comprehensive, and far-reaching. The case of Lily and Jack Sullivan has captured attention across Canada and internationally. Part of the reason is the mystery. 2 young children vanishing without a trace in a rural community is inherently compelling. But another reason is the way the investigation has unfolded. The long period of silence, the lack of answers, the absence of any clear direction. These unsealed documents begin to fill that void. They show that investigators have been working, that they have theories, that they are pursuing evidence. They also raise new questions. If the RCMP was seeking highway surveillance footage, do they believe the children left Nova Scotia? If they were examining bank records, do they suspect financial motives? If they were analyzing cell phone data, do they have concerns about communications? We do not have answers to these questions, but we now know the questions are being asked. For the family of Lily and Jack, these revelations are difficult. The children's paternal grandmother, Belinda Gray, has spoken about the pain of not knowing what happened to her grandchildren. She has called for a public inquiry into the case, including into the role of Child Protective Services. The unsealed documents do not provide closure, but they provide something that has been absent for 8 months. Evidence that the system is working, that investigators are doing their jobs, that no stone is being left unturned. The 12 search warrants executed by the RCMP between May 16th and July 16th, 2025, reveal an investigation that is methodical, comprehensive, and open to multiple theories about what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. The warrants targeted communications, finances, movements, and visual documentation. They sought independent verification of family statements. They explored the possibility that the children were removed from the area. What was found through these searches remains largely sealed. The results are protected as privileged information or delayed disclosure. But the fact that the searches were conducted tells us something important. It tells us that investigators were not satisfied with the initial explanation. They had questions, and they pursued answers through every available channel. 8 months into this case, we still do not know what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. We do not know where they are. We do not know if they are alive or deceased. But we now know that investigators have been working tirelessly to find answers, that they have explored every possibility, that they have gathered information that could eventually lead to resolution. The unsealed documents represent progress, not in the sense of solving the case, but in the sense of transparency, of allowing the public to understand what has been happening behind the scenes. The investigation into the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan continues. The RCMP Major Crime Unit remains committed to pursuing every credible lead until they determine with certainty what happened to these children. The 12 search warrants represent just one aspect of a much larger investigative effort. 86 interviews, 1,030 tips, 8,100 videos reviewed, 7 polygraph examinations. The work continues. If you have been following this case, subscribe to Unsolved Archive for updates as new developments emerge. Hit the like button if you believe Lily and Jack deserve continued investigative resources and public attention. And leave a comment with your thoughts on what these 12 search warrants reveal about the direction of this investigation. Because every missing child deserves to be found. Every family deserves answers. And every case, no matter how complex or difficult, deserves investigators who will not stop searching for the truth.